Act 5, Scene 9. There is jubilation in Malcolm's camp. The battle is won. Malcolm and his forces gather in another part of the battlefield. They take stock of their gains and losses in the battle. Malcolm finds that Macduff and Siward's noble son are not seen among the crowd. Ross tells Siward that his son has died on the battlefield. He had proved his bravery while fighting there. And furthermore, he proved his valor by meeting his death like a man of immense courage, despite his young age. When Malcolm and the nobles lament for the death of young Siward, Macduff enters the scene carrying Macbeth's severed head set on a pole. Finally, the usurper of the throne of Scotland is killed, and Malcolm, the rightful heir to the throne, is now reinstated. Macduff hails him as king. He displays to all the accursed head of the cruel and despotic usurper. Their country is now safe and peace will prevail soon in Scotland. Malcolm is surrounded by all his nobles, conveying to him good wishes. Macduff appeals to them to join him when he acclaims Malcolm as the King of Scotland. Malcolm, on his part, rewards his thanes and friends with the title of Earls. Scotland has conferred this title on her men for the first time. The new king promises to welcome back his countrymen who had fled to foreign lands. He refers to Macbeth and Lady Macbeth as the dead butcher and his devilish queen who took her life with her own violent bloody hands. Besides thanking all those who are present on the scene, he invites them for his coronation at Scone. The trumpets signal the end of the battle, the triumph of good over evil, and greet Malcolm with proper fanfare. The scene is a rather formal conclusion to the play. Malcolm's victory indicates the restoration of the natural order in the universe. Earlier, the natural order was disturbed. People were not safe in their houses. They could not have peaceful sleep. There was no freedom of speech. People of Scotland had lived in constant fear and suspicion. Now that the chaos of tyranny is over and Malcolm looks forward to the time when the kingdom will again be in harmony, he speaks of what should be planted newly with the time, recalling Duncan's words to Macbeth, "I have begun to plant thee." Malcolm concludes the play by appealing to divine grace to assist him to perform what needs to be done in measure, time, and place. The play ends with the defeat of the evil and the triumph over the good. This is one of the leading themes of the play. Thus, the play has a model for us. The dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, as Malcolm describes Macbeth and Lady Macbeth respectively, represented the forces of evil which have been vanquished, while Malcolm and Macduff represent the forces of good. In this scene, retribution is at its best to punish the evildoer. Macbeth has completely lost our sympathies by his reckless evil deeds under the influence of the witches. We admire him to some extent for the courage that he displays in his final moments. He is alone without the support of his wife or his thanes, yet his courage was at its peak. The final impression that he leaves on his audience is that of courage and determination. He feels remorse for the murder of Macduff's wife and son and regrets having done it. At one moment, he does not want to fight. He dies fighting instead of saving his life by offering himself as a prisoner. Thus, he emerges as a great tragic hero. There is pathos in the report which Ross gives to old Siward on the death of young Siward. Siward's reaction to the sad news is worthy of a great military commander. As the representative of a heroic age, Siward's only concern is that he had not turned his back in the fight, but died honorably defending a righteous cause. Siward's son was a young man who proclaimed that he had come to manhood before joining the army. These young men are representatives of the future which Macbeth had sought to suppress. Their revolt against Macbeth's despotism can be compared to the rising of Birnam wood, which symbolizes nature, violated by Macbeth. Young Siward only lived until he showed his willingness to restore order in Scotland, and then, like a man, he died. So scene 9 is the closing scene, which opens with Malcolm, Siward and Ross discussing the aftermath of the battle. Malcolm expresses the hope for safety of their friends, while Siward acknowledges the heavy cost of their victory, including the loss of his own son. Ross informs Siward of his son's death, praising the young man's bravery and honorable death in the battlefield. Malcolm and Siward express their grief, with Siward finding solace in the manner of his son's death. The arriving of Macduff interrupts this somber moment. He enters with Macbeth's head, declaring Malcolm as the rightful king of Scotland. This symbolizes the end of tyranny and the beginning of a new era of freedom. Malcolm addresses the crowd, promising to restore order and justice in Scotland. He plans to reward his supporters and calls for the return of those who fled Macbeth's reign. He also mentions the death of Lady Macbeth, hinting at her suicide. Malcolm concludes by inviting everyone to his coronation at Scone, marking a hopeful future for Scotland. The scene and the play end on this note of restoration and renewal. Malcolm rewards his friends by making them earls, the first of the title in Scotland, and promising to do everything necessary to set the kingdom to rights. And Lady Macbeth, he announces parenthetically, died apparently by suicide. Malcolm, surrounded by his kingdom's pearl, occupies the proper place of a king, the center of things. His proclamation of his thanes as earls suggests the beginning of a new epoch in which there is greater social stability with a more sharply defined social hierarchy. It recalls Duncan's promise that when Malcolm will be invested with his title, signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers, like said in Act 1, Scene 4, line 40 approximately. Malcolm uses the same imagery of nature's bounty as did Duncan. His promise that whatever is necessary to be done will be done is a promise of restoration of order. Scene 9 takes place within the castle, and Malcolm says, "I would the friends we miss were safe arrived. So I wish that our missing friends had safely arrived here at this moment." Siward, "Some must go off, and yet by these I see, so great day as this is cheaply bought." So he says some must obviously be missed, for they are dead, some must die, and yet considering the number of the men that are still left surviving on our side, it may be said that this is a great victory which has been bought at a very low cost. Malcolm, "Macduff is missing, and your noble son." And Ross says, "Your son, my lord, has paid a soldier's debt." So he has paid a soldier's debt. That means he has died in patriotism, and a noble death indeed. He only lived but till he was a man. So he lived only so as to assert his manhood through this battle, the which no sooner had his prowess confirmed in the unshrinking station where he fought, but like a man he died. So as soon as he had his manly courage confirmed at a place where he fought without shrinking, he died like a man. Siward, "Then he is dead." So he is very sad, and he asks again, "Is he dead?" Ross, "Aye, and brought off the field. Your course of sorrow must not be measured by his worth, for then it hath no end." So if your sorrow is to be measured in terms of the virtues he possessed during his last breath or during his last moments, then your grief will have no end, because his virtues were priceless and measureless, immeasurable, and so his body has been brought away from the battlefield. Siward, "Had he his hurts before?" So has he his hurts on the front, injuries on the front or at the back, showing that was he engaged in a face-to-face combat, or was he fleeing away and was hit from the back. So Ross, "Aye, on the front." So you know, it was a very noble death. It was on the front that he bore all his injuries. Why then, God's soldiers be he. Had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not wish them to a fairer death. And so his knell is gnawed. He is his worth more sorrow. So he says, see what says, it was the most honorable death that he has faced probably, and therefore if I had more number of sons, as I have so many hair on my head, if as many sons I had, innumerable, yet I would want or desire as honorable a death as my young seaward has faced. So no death can be nobler than this. Then Malcolm, and that I will spend for him. And yes, so Malcolm says, and yes, obviously and surely we shall spend proper time, a proper amount of time as he deserves, greater mourning than this, and it will be a proper ceremonial one. Seaward, his worth no more, they say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him. Here comes newer comfort. He already has deserved, and what he has deserved he has received. So it was enough of a greater praise. And they say that he died bravely, that he has done his duty honorably, and so may God grant him peace enough. Here comes some fresh comfort that he shall be rewarded again by God. So there is comfort in his death even. So Macduff, hail king, for so thou art. Behold where stands the usurper's cursed head. The time is free. So Macduff comes, and to Malcolm he says, he gives his greetings and tidings and says king, and addresses him as the king, because that is what you are now. Look at the usurper's head which is hung on the point of my lance. The people have regained their freedom. We have restored order. I see thee compassed with thine kingdom's pearl, that speak my salutation in their minds, whose voices I desire aloud with mine. So he says, I see that you are already surrounded by great nobles and who are loyal to you, and they are even silently echoing the same greetings which I am hailing upon you, as we are happy to greet you as the king. Now I wish to hear their voices aloud as mine, and therefore they all hail King of Scotland and greet him, kingship upon him. So Malcolm, we shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with our several loves and make us even with you. So he says, we shall not spend a long time before we reward your individual services and repay our debt to you. So you people have done enough. It's for you that we have achieved this moment and this victory and my kingship, and therefore not very long, far enough I shall waste. Rather I shall duly reward you all for all your services and repay your debts. My thanes and kinsmen henceforth be earls, the first that ever Scotland. So for the first time the title of earl will be used in Scotland, and you people shall be called it. In such an honour named, what's more to do, which would be planted newly with the time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad that fled the snares of watchful tyranny. So of all the people who have ever fled away from Macbeth, let all of them come back, and then we shall have more of ceremonies and confer more of titles on the men, and whatever deans to be done, whatever remains to be done, we shall properly establish the new regime, producing forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen. So who we shall have to bring to justice the merciless agents of this dead butcher, Macbeth, and his devilish queen, Lady Macbeth, who, as it is thought, by self and violent hands took off her life. So referring to Queen's or Lady Macbeth's suicide. And what needful else that calls upon us by the grace of grace. So by the grace of God, what else can we expect? We will perform in measure, time and place. What else has to be done? what else demands to be done, all the necessary things shall be properly sorted out in course of time, in a proper place, in a proper way, which befits the occasion. And so thanks to all at once, and to each one whom we invite to see us crowned at Scone. And therefore he asked everybody to collectively and individually, he addresses everybody and asks them to pay due importance and take his gratitude, accept his humble gratitude and attend his coronation at Scone, which is the traditional site of Scottish coronation.